Hello everyone, today we are talking about this little beauty, the Lanshan 1 Pro. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Simon and today we're talking about the Lanshan 1 Pro and the older Lanshan 1, this being the Pro version. I used it on my West Highland Way walk that I did towards the end of last year. So just some comments around that, some pros and cons and some differences between the two. So if you are new to the channel, do hit subscribe and hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and let's jump into it. So first of all, I bought this tent from 3FUL Gear, and the main consideration is the weight, or the main point about this tent really. They claim on their website that it weighs 690 grams and I bought it from AliExpress. And that is the tent only, 690 grams, so nothing else, no pegs or anything like that, no stuff sack. And I weighed it when I bought it and it weighed a little bit more than that, so I'll put the exact details below. It was over 700 grams, but still that is super light. So I have, just to put it into context, I have a Wild Country Helm 2, now that weighs over 2 kilograms, and that's a 2-person tent. Obviously this is the 1-person. And I also have MSR Hubba NX, or I did have, and that weighed just over 1 kilogram, and that obviously had poles and everything like that. So this is a super lightweight tent compared to those two, and just in general really it is super light. You're looking at kind of Z-packs who do a duplex, which I think weighs around 500 grams. Again, exact weights below. So it's kind of in that ballpark, isn't it? And obviously it doesn't have any poles. The idea is that you use your walking poles or a pole to put up this tent, and that's why it's light, and you make use of the dual function then, because you can use your walking poles also for a tent pole, which I think is a really cool idea. The difference between this tent and the original Lanshan 1 is, first of all, it's bigger inside. So the inner tent is, and we'll go into a bit more detail later in the video, but the inner tent is around 230 centimeters long. The original Lanshan was around 210 centimeters length inside. Next of all, it's a single skin tent, so it doesn't have an inner and outer, it just has one skin. So effectively the ground sheet is sewn into the main fabric of the tent. Also the corners of the tent are slightly more reinforced. Sorry for the noise if you can hear anything. We're sort of in the park in the middle of London, so it is pretty noisy with some building stuff going on outside. So just in terms of the pack size, so it packs down to 35 centimeters by 15 centimeters. You can see there really is nothing to it. But anyway, let's get her out, so to speak. Okay, there she is, all pitched up. You just pull on the cord where the pegs are to tighten everything up. So I would say she comes with 10 pegs and also 4 guy lines. So not actually attached at the moment, but I've just put one on the back there. And I'll explain why. It just creates a little bit more space in the tent. So that's quite handy. This is the sand colour. There's also a green, I think a yellow, and possibly a couple of other colours. I'll put all the details below. But yeah, let's have a look inside, shall we? So one of the first things to mention is that you have to seam seal this tent yourself. Now you can either buy pre-made seam sealer and make sure you get into all of the seams, or you can make your own, which is what I did, and I used some silicone and white spirit, mixed them together and seam sealed the tent myself. So it doesn't come with, it's not already seam sealed, so you need to do that yourself, and it did take me quite a long time. It took me around an hour. The tent is made of a 20D nylon and it has a 5,000mm hydrostatic head. And to pitch the tent, you need to use, as mentioned before, a walking pole at 125 centimeters. And the way I do it is to actually angle the pole inside the fly sheet at the top and fix it in that way. Some people say this is quite tricky, but it's actually really simple once you get the hang of it. And so the inner tent dimensions are 230 centimeters long by a maximum of 110 centimeters wide and down to 80 centimeters wide, and the height is 125 centimeters, so that's quite high, obviously at the tallest point there. The reason it has two widths is because the tent is slightly tapered, so it's the widest point is actually in the middle of the tent, and then it gets narrower either side. This was a good tent for me for the West Highland Way. It was lightweight, and I'm 6'5", or about 195 centimeters, so I thought this was a great height for me, or a great length rather for me. The thing to realize is when you're lying down, if you've got a sleeping pad, sleeping bag, etc., and possibly even a mat under that, it's going to raise your height off the ground, and your head is going to be that much nearer to the sides, which are tapered. So just a point to remember that 230 centimeters sounds nice and long, but actually when you add the extra height on with your sleeping mat, etc., it's going to raise you up and you're going to be that much closer to the edges, which are obviously sloped. So it has a mesh inner, and that's obviously sewn into the outer as well, so it's all one piece, which is good for breathability. It also has toggles just to hold the one door back, and just the one door flap opens. And it also has a vestibule as well, which is a reasonable size vestibule, I'd say. I'll put the measurements below. And one thing that could be slightly better is, so there's one toggle here to hold the door back, but it would be nice to have one more toggle really just to hold the kind of the mesh inner back as well. Oddly, there is like a separate toggle point, but because there's only one toggle and there are two connectors, you can't actually peg both the sort of inner and outer door out. So that would be slightly better if it had two toggles. And I've just found a workaround actually, so you can just kind of pull the mesh sort of inner door round and use the one toggle. So two loops on one toggle, which seems to work, just taking you in. So the issue you can see straight away is great for sitting up in the middle, but it's very limited space either end, so your head's going to touch this. Now, being a single skin tent, you're going to get condensation in every single tent, so this isn't designed for at all. But these I found on the coast to coast got soaking wet on the walls, so when your sleeping bag is touching them things, it's not ideal. I used the Hubbard NX, which has a dual skin, so an inner and outer tent, and that was for me a bit better because you didn't have this condensation issue, so you didn't have to worry about your sort of nice down sleeping bag touching the inner and getting soaking wet in the mornings. But you know, as I said, you really can't avoid condensation. All tents have it, so it's just something that you have to accept with this tent being a single skin. And you've got a handy pocket just on the inside. You can see as well here how the guy lines really, when you've got them sort of in use, it really sort of helps with that head height issue that I mentioned before. So guy lines in use, the points are there on the outside, and it will really help to take each side out a lot more, so you actually have a lot more space. Here you can see it's working quite well for the one that I pegged out at the back. And there's a hook just here, just for hanging your camping light on. Just a couple more things on the outside of the tent. It's got pegging points there, so there are two here, so you can, when the door is down, you can have a nice big vestibule area on the inside, and then two more here, one at the back there, and two more the other side as well. So they're kind of all the main peg out points. It does have another loop just in here, so you can actually roll this door back if you need to, although I don't know why you would, because the inner only has one door section, so there's no real kind of benefit. Maybe, I guess if it's actually a warmer day, it might help cool the tent down a bit maybe, and you've obviously got the mesh covering across the whole thing, so that might be quite useful. And I've just smashed in my Thermarest extra large, so you can kind of gives you a sense of how big the tent is inside. can see it there. So I would say overall, really good 10. Nostalgic for me. I only used it twice on the coast to coast. I did 4 nights in total. And brilliant 10. I mean, the condensation is a real pain in the ass, if I'm honest. But for the money, so this cost me around £130. Again, I'll put the details below. I'll put the length of this map below so you can kind of see like how that compares as well. And yeah, for the price, you can't beat it in terms of the lightness. As I said before, the Z-Pack duplex is expensive, around £500 or £600. Just in terms of like the weatherproofness, it didn't, believe it or not, when I went in September, it didn't actually rain on me. So there was a bit of condensation and stuff on the inner. There's a bit of morning dew, so I can't really tell whether the seam sealing that I did actually held firm. And that's brings me on to the other downside really. It took a long time to seam seal it, and you've really got to get a small brush really and get into the sort of the cracks of the tent and the main areas where the fabric joins together, because otherwise it is going to leak. Although I can't personally speak for how waterproof it was, and that was a real drag. It took me a good couple of hours to seam seal the tent, so that's a little bit annoying that you have to do that. But again, for the price that you're paying, you'd expect there might be sort of an element of that. So I think for the money, it's a good 10. The size is nice. I think if I was to review it again, I probably would spend a little bit more money and just get something that kind of is lightweight, but also has 2 layers to it. And an example of that is the Big Agnes copper spur, which I'm looking at the moment. So there it is. The 3FUL gear Lanshan 1 Pro version. Worth mentioning, I've not actually used the Lanshan 1 original, so just talking around the differences from what I've done through my research, and I've obviously used the Lanshan 1 Pro. Right, that is it for this video, guys. If you enjoy it, do subscribe if you're new around here. It really helps with the support. Hit the like button if you enjoy the video, and add a comment below. Have you used the Lanshan 1 Pro? What are your thoughts on it? What could they do better? What could be improved? And what are the positive comments you might have? Okay, take care everyone. I'll see you on the next video. Bye.